Well, folks, we've made it to the end of 2023. 2023 has been a good year. I need to check how many books I've read so far. And we have Mr. Nosy here, of course. 2023 has been a good year so far in a few different ways, but in terms of my reading, it has been really good. I have a lot of complicated feelings when it comes to a reading goal for the year. It's something I've kind of been reformatting for myself or just reconsidering in general. In the past couple years, I've set my goal to 50 and I've hit 50 a few times. One year I hit 60. It's kind of made reading feel like a chore because I'm constantly thinking about numbers. And I'm planning on making an entire video about reading goals, so I won't get too into it now. But for the first time since I've been pretty consistently hitting 50 books a year, I decided to set my reading goal to 30, which I knew wouldn't be a problem for me to hit. I was hoping that it would encourage me to read longer books instead of thinking like, well, I can read 5 of these short ones and it will get me along further in my goal. Because I think that's kind of a toxic mindset. You shouldn't be choosing your books based off what's gonna like boost your numbers. So anyways, I set my goal to 30 and at this point in time, I've read 59 books. But today, I'm gonna walk you through the 10 best books that I read in 2023. There were a lot of honorable mentions as well, but oh well. We're just gonna focus on the best of the best today to keep it real simple for you. Before we get into it, not only the song of the day, but the song of the year, according to my 2023 Spotify Wrapped, was All of the Girls You Loved Before by Taylor Swift. If you somehow didn't know, huge Swiftie here. Huge Swiftie. If you haven't given that one a listen somehow, some way, somehow, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and do that for me. My beverage of choice tonight? Just water. Just water. I thought that was fitting because every single year, my New Year's goal is to just drink more water, like the amount you're supposed to drink per day, because I'm so bad about it. I literally never do. And every year it's my goal and I still have never successfully been able to do it. So 2024 is my year. Hold me accountable. Cheers. Before I get into my top 10 books of 2023, I need to mention it is only December 19th as I'm filming this. I have some reservations about filming my favorite books of 2023 before the year's actually over, because obviously I'm going to be reading in these next few weeks. I'm giving the people what they want, and I'll tell you now before the year is over. But I have a few books that I'm currently reading, or I am certain I'm going to read before the end of the year, that I feel like could make it onto this list, but I won't have finished them in time while filming this video, so I'm just gonna give them a little bit of a shout out. The first book that I'm currently reading is Little Women. I do have this and I have been reading it with this, but I've mainly been listening to the audiobook. So I'm about 70% through it right now, and I can already tell you this is 5 stars. This is potentially a new favorite for me. I'm just so shocked and amazed at how well Greta Gerwig adapted this book into a movie, because I'm like, as I'm reading these iconic scenes from the story, I'm like, oh my god, this is line for line in that movie. And I love the movie, so of course I love the book. This is one that I can imagine myself doing a reread or a re-listen to the audiobook every Christmas. I'm obsessed, I'm loving it. This is probably in my top 3 of the year. Haven't finished it, but I know how the story ends, I know how it goes. Love this. I haven't started the next 2 I'm gonna mention, but I know for a fact I will read them before the end of the year, because one is my book club book and the other I'm doing a buddy read for. And one is Eileen by Otessa Moshfegh. I mentioned in my last reading vlog that I'm doing a buddy read of this with my boyfriend, and we have planned to read the first half this week and the second half the following week. So I'm obviously going to do that. We have plans. It seems like it'd be a quick read, and I really want to read it before going to see the movie. So I'm sure it will be read this year. I don't know, I think it has the potential to be on my top 10 list. I've never read an Otessa Moshfegh book. The reason I think it has the potential to make it on this list is because it's giving me vibes of I'm thinking of ending things, which is one of my favorite books. I don't know if they're actually similar at all. I think maybe I'm just comparing the covers and I'm like, oh my god, they're the same. So I don't know. I don't actually like concretely know anything about this book, but I have a vibe. I'm catching a vibe. I think there's potential. And the last book that I intend to read before the end of this year that I think could make it into a top 10 list for me is Divine Rivals. This is my book club's December book, so you better believe I will be reading it. This is a fantasy book, something about time travel? Wait, I don't even know actually. This is the one where they're communicating to each other through like letters under a door. Fantasy, gods. I don't know the details, but I've heard so many people say good things about it, and I don't read a lot of fantasy, so usually when I read the popular fantasy books that everyone's like really hot on, I usually like it too, because I think those books tend to like transcend fantasy readers. Sounds like it's a good romance. That's what I've heard a lot of people talk about. And I'm kind of itching for something like that. I'm still working my way through A Court of Mist and Fury, and that's kind of been scratching the itch. So I can just totally see myself getting really invested in this. So she has the potential to make the list. We'll see. But now, let's go ahead and get into the list of the books I actually did read and that I would consider the 10 best I read in 2023. So the list is actually perfectly split in half between physical books and audiobooks, which I feel like is a perfect reflection of my reading habits or preferences. Actually, it's not perfect because I definitely listen to a lot more audiobooks than I read physical books, but the way I feel about them is equal. I love audiobooks and I love physical books. Maybe I will alternate between the two. The list is in no particular order just because it's hard enough getting it down to 10. Except the final 3 I will be mentioning are my top 3 of the year, but within those 3, I don't know which was my favorite. I don't know, I can't decide. So with that, let's get into it. Misery by Stephen King. I read this one in the beginning of the year when it was really cold and icy out still, and that 100% affected my reading experience in a positive way. If you don't know, Misery is a book about a popular author who is in a car accident and someone saves him. That someone is his most avid, crazy fan, and she locks him in her house in the middle of nowhere and basically holds him captive. This book is so terrifying. You can totally see yourself reading an article in the news about this happening. Maybe I'm really making that connection since Stephen King is such a popular author, and I'm sure he wrote it out of his own like fears and anxiety, and his brain is crazy. We know this. Super unsettling, and some of the details he writes just gruesome. I'm like thinking about it now. This is on my like top 10 of the year, but I think I rated this 4 stars. And the reason for that is because the book is really great, but every once in a while it like sprinkles in multiple pages of the book that the author is writing in the story. And like you can definitely draw like parallels, and I'm sure he did it for a good reason, but it was boring. I didn't care for it that much. The actual story, like if you just took those out, 5 stars. You know what I mean? And I think that's fine. I think the rest I gave 5 stars, but I honestly don't remember. Next, I'll talk about an audiobook, which is I'm Glad My Mom Died by Jennette McCurdy. If you grew up watching iCarly, I'm sure you know who Jennette McCurdy is. And if you're just on the internet, I'm sure you've heard about this book because I'm Glad My Mom Died is a fantastic memoir. It is worth all the hype it's receiving, and if you haven't read it yet, you definitely should. I'm an avid audiobook supporter in general, but I'm especially supportive of the audiobook for I'm Glad My Mom Died. And that's because Jennette McCurdy narrates it herself, which I think makes it so much more impactful because you're hearing the voice that you recognize from your childhood. She's telling you these really like awful things she had to go through, and it makes it like hit home that much more. So if you haven't read it yet, or if you're interested in doing a reread, I highly recommend giving the audiobook a chance. Next on the list, we have The Troop by Nick Cutter. This was my book club's October book. The Troop is a really creepy and unsettling and disturbing and depraved and, you know, add more synonyms book. If you have a problem with bugs, specifically worms, do not read this book. Do not even open it. And I'm saying that as someone who is deeply afraid of bugs. Before, I would say not so much worms, but now I would. I'm terrified. The troop follows a Boy Scout troop as they're on their like wilderness expedition on a kind of a remote island. And they are greeted one night, I think the first night, by a very thin, pale, disturbing stranger. And I really can't say much more than that without giving it away, but things go downhill from there. That's what I'll say. And when I say downhill, oh, they go down. They go so far down. This book is the first book in a very long time that has actually scared me, like truly chilled me to the bone. The writing is great. There's so many interesting and well thought out characters. Yeah, not much else to say other than if you are interested in horror or you just like really want to read something that's going to terrify you, pick this one up. And I really recommend reading it in October because that's when I read it and it just made the whole Halloween season have a very eerie vibe to it. So the next audiobook on the list is The Cherry Robbers by Sarai Walker. This is just like my perfect cup of tea book. The Cherry Robbers is about a family and it's from the perspective of maybe not the youngest daughter, but one of the younger daughters. And it's a family full of daughters. I can't remember now, but I think there's 5 or so. And they live in this old Victorian house that their mother thinks is haunted. Their wealth has come from a gun business. Like I think their family makes guns. So her mother's convinced that the house is haunted by the victims of the gun violence, and none of the daughters believe her except for Sylvia. What happens is that there's basically like a curse put on this family. After one of the daughters gets married, she immediately dies. And the mother and Sylvia both believe it is because of this curse. It's a really great book. If you like family stories, if you like, I guess, period pieces, because it's not like modern day. But for me, like, I think the selling factor is that it's like a perfect combination between The Haunting of Hill House, which, okay, I haven't read The Haunting of Hill House, but the show at least, and The Virgin Suicides, where it's like, you know these girls are cursed to die, The Virgin Suicides, and they're in a haunted house? Maybe? Yes? No? The Haunting of Hill House. If you like either of those stories, I think you will enjoy this one as well. Next up, we got another physical book, except I lent it to my dad, so I don't have the physical thing here with me, but that is Gone Girl by Gillian Flynn. I've talked about her so many times on my channel already, but I love Gillian Flynn. I've now read every single one of her books. So Gone Girl was the last of her main novels that I had to read, so that was really cool to check off my list. Gone Girl is the story between Nick and Amy Dunn. They've been married for 5 years, and on their 5th wedding anniversary, Amy goes missing. We don't know why, where she is, but we like learn more about their marriage and things are revealed, and it's very interesting. And this is like one of the best dual perspective books, I think. She does it so well, where every other chapter is Nick, then Amy, then Nick, and you're always like, by the time you get to the next chapter, you're ready to hear what the other person is thinking or doing. Gone Girl is just as great as you've probably heard that it is. The movie is great as well, but I think the book is just a hair better, because getting to like get inside the minds of those characters is just so good. The movie tries to do it, but it just, you know, the movie can never quite do what a book does. I think it's actually my least favorite Gillian Flynn book, which isn't saying that it's bad by any means. It's still in my top 10 of the year. I gave it 5 stars, but I just love her other books so much more. Maybe it's good to start with Gone Girl, which I obviously didn't do, because then it'll just keep getting better and better as you move through her catalog. Next on the list, we have The Guest by Emma Cline. Okay, I literally just looked up the character's name and I saw, I gave this book a 3 stars. But it's in my top 10? I don't know, guys. I guess I kind of didn't have like the best reading year. Like I'd say everything was like just kind of mid overall. I mean, there was a few things that stood out a lot, and that's like my top 3. But there was nothing even like really like horrible even. It was just kind of like, okay, I kind of just grazed through the year. So that's why a book that I rated 3 stars ended up on my top 10 list. I don't know, it's hard to rate books and like really think about, I don't know, the moment after you read it, like you don't know if it's gonna have an impact on you. And so when I was looking through my list to see what all I read this year, I like picked the ones that stood out to me the most and that like I remember the plot really compelling me, and I rated it 3 stars, but maybe it should have been bumped up to a 4. I'm unreliable. So take this list with a grain of salt, I guess. Anyways, The Guest is a book about a girl named Alex who is kind of going through her life, just like hanging on to what she can, getting by. She does that by kind of mooching off sugar daddies, I think. I don't think it ever explicitly calls them sugar daddies in the book, but basically she's mooching off wealthy older men who are like paying her to date, sleep with them. That's sugar daddy, right? Right? I just said sugar daddy so many times. But she's in a situation where whoever she was seeing at the time kind of kicks her out. It's done with her and she can't pay her rent, and she meets this guy. She, maybe for a moment in time, thinks that she's using him for money, but she thinks maybe they could be more serious. She's a very unreliable narrator. This guy ends up breaking up with her and she's kind of like, okay, I can fix this. I can get back together with him. He like, I don't know if I loved him, but it was a really comfortable situation, so I just need to like get back in there. I think the story takes place over like maybe a week or like a weekend. So she's trying to get by until she can make it to his like end of summer or maybe 4th of July party where she thinks she's gonna like go and make up with him. It's a very interesting character study about this person who will do whatever she can to get by without like really having to work that hard. That's kind of like the implication, like the surface level, like she's like leeching on to these people or these rich men because she doesn't want to work for whatever reason. But in reality, she's working very hard to keep up this act and persona and like stay specifically with this man, but that seems to be like the course of her life. The ending is kind of left up in the air, and like I think that's the reason it made it on this list, is because it's one of those endings where you have to decide yourself what you think actually happened because you kind of don't know. And I really like endings like that that are a little bit like murky, but I gave it 3 stars, so maybe not the best book of the year, but definitely an interesting read. I'd recommend it. I'd be interested to hear if anyone else read it and like how they feel about it after reading it. I have one more book to talk about before I get into my final top 3. So this one is also an audiobook that I listened to, and that would be The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I've like deeply been in my Hunger Games era. It's like all I've been thinking about for like, at least the past month. Although I read the book back in May, I think. Since I like rewatched the trilogy movies, and then I went and saw the prequel, and I did the live stream with Joanna and the crew, my head has just been so Hunger Games. And actually maybe what it was when my TikTok feed started giving me a lot of Josh Hutcherson edits. That might be what it was. I loved The Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes. I thought it was an amazing prequel, and the more I look into the series, the more impressed I am by Suzanne Collins' integrity, just like to keep that string tight throughout the whole series. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's a plot hole. Like she really checked all the boxes, crossed every T, dotted every I, and I think the series is just fantastic. And the prequel, it just did it for me. I remember back when it first came out, people were like, oh wow, her check finally ran out, like she needed more money, this book sucks. You people were wrong. You were wrong. And I think it's become very apparent now that more people have actually read it and more people are talking about it, that Suzanne Collins is not a cash grab author. She will truly only put another book out when she has something to say, and she clearly had more to comment on through the series. And if you saw the movie but you didn't read the book, absolutely go back and read the book. Excellent book. 5 stars. Great movie. I love The Hunger Games. And now, finally, we're getting into my top 3. I have 2 physical books and 1 audiobook. Let me pull out one of the physical books. One was Writers and Lovers by Lily King. Loved it. Loved it. Oh my god. So Writers and Lovers follows Casey, this woman who is now in her 30s. Her dream has always been to be a writer. She went to college for writing, and now she's in her 30s and she's working at a restaurant, but she's still diligently writing every day, you know, trying to at least. Whereas all her friends who she went to school with, who are also writers, have given up their dream and moved on to do something with their life that could more easily sustain their lifestyle, and basically gave up their passion because it's hard. And Casey's kind of realizing that she's the only one left, and she's struggling, like, should I keep fighting? Like, you know, what am I really fighting for? Is this ever gonna work out? While at the same time, she's dealing with the grief of the loss of her mother, who died unexpectedly. And at the same time, she's dealing with some weird relationships just with men at this point in her life where she's so confused and she kind of doesn't know where to turn next. Oh my god, it's such a good book. It's not really like plot heavy, it's more vibes, it's more about her character and growth. At the time of summer, when I was reading this, I was thinking about, okay, what am I gonna do next? And how does my life unfold now? It just really stuck with me and I loved it. And it really reminded me of the movie Frances Ha. I think it's a very, very similar thing where Frances Ha is in New York in her 30s and she wants to be a dancer, and it's kind of hasn't worked out up until this point and she's reconsidering her options. Very similar vibes. Absolutely one of my favorites. 5 stars all the way. Loved it. The next book in my top 3 of 2023 is Lessons in Chemistry. This book completely caught me by surprise. I don't even know why I read it, to be honest. I kind of did as a joke. So my friend Eden worked at Barnes & Noble, and this was the Barnes & Noble book club book. And I remember talking about it with her, and she was like, oh my god, I'm tired of seeing this book. It's like promoted all over Barnes & Noble. In my humble opinion, hers too, the cover's goofy. It is so goofy. It just looks like a cheesy romance book that's like, it's catered like you expect it to be your typical like rom-com story that just lacks a lot of substance, but it has the backing of like, but she's in science. It is not that. It is not that at all. In fact, I would not even consider it a romance book. There is a romance in it, and that's a big part of the story, but that's not anywhere close to being the point of the book. Or I shouldn't say the point, but it's not a romance book. It's, I'd say, like literary fiction, maybe just general fiction. Yes, it has romance, but it's not a rom-com. It's maybe the opposite of a comedy where it made me sob. Literally so much. I listened to the audiobook. I was listening to it a lot while driving back and forth between my apartment and my parents' house, just sobbing. Oh my god, borderline had to pull over on the side of the road because I'm crying my eyes out. But let me tell you what the book's even about. The book follows Elizabeth Zott, who is a chemist, and she is very firm in that. She grows up knowing she's gonna be a chemist. That is her dream. That is her only goal in life. It's set in the 60s. Maybe when she's in school, it's in the 50s. Obviously a time that is not very accepting of women being in fields such as chemistry. She's not taken seriously at all. In fact, she's treated horribly. She goes through some really awful things, and yet she's still pursuing chemistry. And then it cuts to years later, you find out she is the chef on a TV show, like a cooking show. But then you read the whole beginning and she's very stern about, I am a chemist, take me seriously. So why is she doing this like housewife type cooking show? So it's kind of her whole story about, you know, sexism in the industry, being a woman in STEM, and the compromises you just have to make as a woman, and about how love can really change you. And oh my god, I'm like about to tear up thinking about it. Like, that's how good it is. Like, it is such an impactful book, and it just really like made me think about being a woman and what that means, and how oh my god, goddamn, and how like far women have come, but also how not far at all. It just has so much heart, great characters, phenomenal writing. Like, it is top tier book. I would maybe go out of my way to say this is my favorite book of 2023. I mean, I'm literally like tearing up just talking about it. So if that doesn't convince you to read it, I don't know what will. It is such a good book. Please do not let its weird rom-com cover deter you from reading it. And the last book in my top 3 of 2023 is Dark Matter by Blake Crouch. This is another book that I read with my book club this year. So I would say that this is like a sci-fi thriller, which I don't typically read sci-fi, and nor did any of the other girls in my book club. So they were all like a little bit sus. If you're unsure about sci-fi, give Dark Matter a shot. I really think this is a book that anyone can enjoy and get into because it is so thrilling. It is like the epitome of a page turner, in my opinion. So Dark Matter follows this guy, Jason, who weirdly enough is also a scientist. I guess 2023 was the year of scientists for me. I think he's a physicist. He had a very like promising career. He was kind of projected to be like a really important man in the science scene. What's the right term for that? I don't know. But he ends up getting married instead. He gets his wife pregnant, so he gives up his dreams to pursue a life with his family, and he doesn't regret it. He's very happy with his life, even if it's like a little bit more smaller and humble than it was kind of projected to be. Until one night, he is knocked out, kidnapped, and he wakes up, and suddenly he's in his life if he had been a successful scientist. So he wakes up in this new world, seeing basically like what could have been, and getting to experience that, and even seeing, oh my god, this is everything I ever dreamed of. My life is great. He still wants to go back to his life with his family because he didn't regret giving it up. So he's kind of trapped in like a multiverse situation, basically trying to find his way back home. And wow, is it good. It is so good. It's thrilling, and it's not that long, so it's really a book that you can just get into. So I'd really recommend it if you are in a reading slump. Maybe give this one a shot. And those are my top 10 books of 2023. Like I said, it's been kind of a mid-year. Now that I've graduated school, I work a 9-to-5 job, and I pretty much just pop audiobooks in all day, every day. That has helped me just read more in general, but it's also kind of left me, I guess, being like a little bit less selective of what I'm reading. Just because quantity goes up does not mean quality will go up. Seriously though, I did really enjoy all these books, even if I didn't necessarily rate them 5 stars. My like rating system is so messed up. It's just like truly how I'm feeling exactly in the moment when I finish the book. Thanks for sticking with me. If you've read any of these books, I would love to know if you thought they were worthy of a top 10 list, or what was your favorite book of 2023. Let me know in the comments below. I'll see you in 2024 with more books, more videos, more good vibes. Bye.